Welcome to the post-production videos. In this episode we're going to talk about additions that you can add on just for fun that are out there in the community, and how to have some fun with your images even though you feel like you've got it pretty right out of camera anyway, but there's always something that you can do if you want to. So this is the before file, and I'm just going to show you the after. So what we're going to do is grab this before image and add some sun rays to the background and some golden sunlight. So a gentle change, not actually that much done, but it did take a little while to keep it so that it still looks pretty natural. And we've also got dust and all that kind of thing happening in the background there now. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to start in Lightroom, and what we're going to do is simply press develop, and we'll go from here. Now, on to my left, the camera's left, the little girl's right, is a reflector, and that's what brought that light back onto her face. So her face is pretty well lit up. You can even see the reflector in her eyes with catch lights. However, this was shot at the wrong time of day. Even though it was the afternoon, it wasn't quite the late afternoon that I would have liked. So there are some details that we can bring back. However, most of what we're going to be doing here is in Photoshop. First of all, I'm just going to drag the highlights down and the whites down. Then I'm going to grab the adjustment brush. Now these are all very simple adjustments. On a photo like this, not much needs to be done, and I'm just going to lighten her up just a touch, just to bring back some of that reflector light that just went with the whites and highlights when I dragged that across. Okay, now one thing I would like to do is grab a gradient filter. Now this, you can add colour using a gradient filter, and all I'm doing is adding a little bit of orange actually, so because later on we want the sun to come in there. So now it already looks like the sun's coming in, and I do want to grab an adjustment brush again, double click to bring everything back to standard, and I would like to lighten up this little duck here just a touch. Now if we zoom in on the duck, I do believe that we have some of this purple here. Now in Lightroom you can actually get rid of that. So let's scroll down to defringe. And all I'm going to do is reduce the purples. So I'm going to drag that across to about 13 there, and it's just defringed it. Got rid of that purple that was around that duck. Okay, so now last but not least, what I would like to do is just add a little bit of warmth. Now I do need to grab the adjustment brush and bring back blue on her and her dress. Now that's too much blue, but that warmth made her a little bit too yellow for my liking. So I'll just bring that back a touch. Alright, so now we are going to take her into Photoshop, and we'll work from there. See you in Photoshop. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. Now I've got the file here working on a TIFF file as always, and behind it I've got the done file so that we can go back and compare what we need to do. Now as you can see, there is still a little bit to do to bring that sun rays down and to bring detail back on the girl. But like I said at the very beginning of this video, you could almost leave this as is, it's fine. That's the great thing about getting it out of camera right, so that you don't have to do anything. But if you did envision that it had beautiful sun rays and you wanted to add it in, this is how you could do it, and it's fairly simple. Okay, so first of all I'm just going to add a curves adjustment, and what I would like to do is simply add a little bit of green to the background and a little bit of yellow. Okay, and a little bit of red. Alright, so now all I've done is add a little bit of a glow back there, and now I need to grab a black brush. So I've got it on the curves mask, and I'm going to erase that off on her at 100% opacity. I might do the duck as well. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is grab a solid colour, and I'm going to make it kind of a peachy colour. I'm going to make that a soft light layer and reduce the opacity of that down. So that already adds in a bit of a glow. Okay, so let's go back to how it was. There we go. So now it's even warmer. Now I might just again erase that off on her. Okay, now I'm going to grab a filter and add a red photo filter over the top, just to add a little bit of red back in, and I'll reduce the opacity of that back down. Okay, there we go, and of course erase it off on her. So really the skin tones are so nice already out of camera, well, out of Lightroom. I did lighten them up just a touch in Lightroom, that I don't really want to change the skin tones too much. Okay, so all of that has done very little. Let's have a look. It's just added a little bit of colour in. It's made the greens a little bit greener. Okay, now I need another curves adjustment, and I'm going to drag the curves down a touch so that it mats out the background and makes the wee little thing more contrasty and makes her stand out more, because that's after all, she is what we want to stand out. And the duck, and I'll make sure I bring back some of these leaves as well up here. Alright, and we might just pop that into that folder there. Now if you make a mask layer of a folder, you can erase off on certain areas of the whole thing if you want. There we go. Okay, I'm going to duplicate the background layer. Duplicate the group. And just merge those two. And now we have a new background. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is go in and work on adding some sun rays. Now there's plenty of places that you can get sun rays. We're going to use a brush, and in the PDF that I've given you, there's details, and I've just simply gone to DeviantArt. DeviantArt is a great place. It's been around for years and years for those of you that haven't heard of it, at deviantart.com. And it has lots of people who are talented, especially digital artists or people that are learning to become digital artists. They often create free textures and brushes and all those kind of things to share with other people in the community. Now you can actually download and use a lot of them. Some of them are for commercial license, some of them not. You just have to read the guidelines. Now the brushes that I have downloaded are called Light Rays brushes, and they're from Spirit Size stock. And in the PDF there's a link there. Now my advice with this kind of thing, and I've mentioned this in the PDF, is to be aware that they are actually free. They're stock standard stuff, so they're things that other people can get and use. Be careful with it. If you remember that before, let's have a look again. You can see the rays here, but again, I've not made it that obvious. I just want it to be very slight. And I did it recently in a shoot. I added it in the background, just very lightly. If I'm going to play around with this stuff, I do tend to keep it very, very light. That being said, let's get to this. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to call it Sun Rays. So I've downloaded the brushes. Let's have a look at the brushes. Okay. Now as you can see in my brush palette, these are all the brushes that are available to you when you download Spirit Size stock Sun Rays brushes. And all I've done here, actually I might do a new layer. So it's just a layer, is select a brush that goes downward, and I'm going to make that into a yellow and make it quite large. Now that one hasn't at all turned out yellow, so let's go down, make it even more yellow. That's too large. Can we make that 4,000-ish? Yep. Okay. Alright, there we go. Now I'm going to reduce the opacity of that right down, and then I'm going to grab, should always do it on a mask, a black brush, and just erase that off in the trees. Okay, and on her. Okay, so there we have some rays coming down. Now if we have a look, we have got some other effects, so I'm just going to reduce the opacity of that one. Now this does take a little while, well, I guess for the first time it does anyway. Layer, new layer, and we're going to do it again. This time we'll grab a different brush. Really what you use is up to you, and it's all just playing. Might put this on white. Okay. And again, use a mask and brush off on that one. Okay, let's go back and have a look. Okay, so now we've kind of got the rays there, as you can see. But what we are missing is the dust particles. Now the dust particles, again, are something that I downloaded from DeviantArt, from Rowan911, deviantart.com. You can just download, I downloaded the PNG files, and I'll open that up for you, and we'll add it in. Okay, so I selected the WG dust particles 6.png from Rowan911 at deviantart.com. Like I said, if you just type in Google dust particles to Photoshop, there's lots and lots of options. Again, be careful with this. When you zoom in at 100%, it doesn't actually look too much like dust particles. So what I'm going to do here is really be careful with it. Okay, so all I'm going to do is drag that on and dump it. Now, that doesn't look like dust particles, does it? So what I want to do is firstly erase off on her, and I'm going to reduce the opacity of that right down. In fact, they're too big, so let's keep them at 100% opacity. That's better. Now, some of the ones that he has there are also in black, and all you need to do, say if they were black, is selection image adjustments invert, and that makes them black. But if they are already black, image adjustments invert makes them white. Okay, so now I've made them smaller, reduce the opacity of that down, and they're barely there. You could also colorize them a little bit if you wanted to add a little bit of yellow into them. You do a curves adjustment over the top and add yellow. And I can't see which way it is. I think it's that way. Probably wrong. Yep, that was the way. Okay. So, okay, now what I need to do is add in some warmth up that top corner. So I'm just going to lasso here and add a little bit of color balance. Add in a little bit of warmth. Alright, so let's group those. Sun rays. Okay. So this is with the sun rays added. There we go, before and after. Alright, so now basically we just need to finish off the whole feel. What I would like to do is add a little bit of a vignette, so I'm going to go to gradient and maybe make that a little green, dark green, too green, there we go. And then I'm going to make it radial and inverse that and press OK. Now as you can see, it's added a green vignette. It's just too much, but I'm going to simply put that gently over the top and grab a black brush and erase that off on the areas that I don't want it. Okay, so it's just softened out the edges. So it's brought detail back into the fact that we're looking at that sun ray. I'm drawing attention, I should say, to the sun rays. Okay. Now I would like to do an overall warmth again. Let's have a look. Why don't we just do a photo filter? But I would like it to be more yellow. Okay. And I'm going to erase off on her. Now an overall saturation. I do like my saturation. There we go. And I'm going to erase off on her, however, with a reduced opacity brush. There we go. Alright. Now if we have a look in here, I do think I have some work to do. I'm going to now, what are we up to? Sun rays. Duplicate these layers and then merge layers and make a new background. Okay, Control J, duplicate that, and I'll call that bottom one nearly done. Okay, so now I've got a new working background, and on this one I'm just going to fix the color. So I think I could actually mask this. I just need to fix that area around her hair. So I'm going to lasso this and do some color balance on a mask. Okay, that's better. Okay, I'm going to grab a curves layer, mask, and just lighten up around her a little bit. You don't need all that detail there. Okay, so that's way too much done. So all I need to do now is grab the black brush and erase off on her. Ooh, and the areas that I don't want it. Okay. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity of that down. Okay, great. All right. I think we're done. Last but not least, let's run a portraiture. So I'm going to, let's just put all of these into a folder. Firstly, and I'm going to duplicate that layer. And merge it. Okay, so let's have a look at this before and after. And as you can see, it looks like she's got sun falling down on her, which she did, but not quite so much. Now, I'm going to use portraiture now, which is Imagematic, which I've mentioned before. Oh, apparently I'm not going to do that. There we go. Now, I've got it on default. I've got the warmth up a little bit. I might just add that up a little bit more. Just to add a little bit more warmth in. Now it's going to saturate her skin up a bit, because her skin's pretty warm. We'll see how we go. Yep, it has. But it's also added a nice glow back here. So because of that, all I'm going to do is lasso here, go to a mask, view saturation, grab any other color but red. So I'm going to go green, click on her and it should bring up red twos, and it has, and that's the skin. And I'm just going to desaturate her back again to how she was. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's about it. Okay. Maybe just a touch more. 10. And voila, we are done. Alright, so that concludes this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun looking at DeviantArt if you haven't been there already, and having a look to see what capabilities there are and what fantastic things you can add into your images if you want to add some digital artistry. And again, make sure it's subtle. Enjoy.